Okay, so here we are. It's been about 10 hours letting this dough rise overnight. And look how huge it is. So my starter I was worried about a little bit because I let it go a little bit long, but as you can see, it did wonderful things. You see this big bubble here? That is what the stretching does, help get that air into it, and so it looks awesome. We're going to take it out of the bowl, divide it, and let it sit for 15 minutes, which is called a bench time. So what I do is I take some flour and just flour my surface a little bit. So the dough doesn't stick as much, but it is sort of sticky. You know, I'll do it this way. I have to kind of pull it out of the bowl. It's super airy and light. It has lots of bubbles in it. That's great. And after I pull it all out of the bowl, I'm just going to gather it back up in a ball, and I'm going to cut it in half. Because this makes 2 loaves. Let's try and have each side even. And then you're going to do one more stretch of the dough. And fold it in thirds. So just like that. And then you're just gonna let it sit for 15 minutes. So I'm gonna stretch this side. Fold it into thirds. And we'll let it sit and come back in 15 minutes. Okay, we're back from our 15-minute bench time with this, and we're going to just form these into loaves and let them rise for their final time. So I don't think there's really any wrong or right way to do this with loaves. I just like mine smooth at the top, and so I just kind of roll it back and forth each way, forward and back and side to side. You know, trying to kind of get a nice, smooth, round loaf. These are rounded ones, so you don't like roll them out like other bread. And then I don't have those fancy little baskets that you put the bread in, so I just get a bowl and I line it with a towel. And you don't want the bread to stick to the towel, so you can take some flour and just sprinkle it in or on top of your bread as well. And you're gonna take it and you're gonna place it the top down so the seam is up into your bowl. And then I put a little more flour on top. And then I just cover it, and it rises for 2 hours. So I'm going to do the same with the other loaf, and we'll be back in 2 hours. Okay, get excited, because in 40 minutes you are going to have wonderful, delicious artisan bread. It is risen now for 2 hours, and it's looking good. So the next step, and I've already done this, you know, about 15 minutes, however long it takes for your oven to heat up, you want to start the oven before you're ready to bake it. So you set it to 460, and you put your pans actually in the oven to heat up with the oven. Now I know that if you are a professional baker, which I am not, they recommend using these cast iron, these enamel cast iron pans that weigh like 100 pounds. So I personally don't own those. They're super expensive. I'm borrowing one from my sister. So I have baked these in a big stainless steel pot or other cookware. It just needs a lid and it needs to be oven safe. But again, if you have cast iron, that is the best and most professional way of doing it. So I've already put these pans in the oven. I put both mine in one oven because they both fit on a rack. But before I open that up and show you, we're gonna get our bread ready on parchment. So you will need parchment paper. And I just like to tear off a big square for each loaf. And the reason why you flipped it down, seam up in your bowl or basket is because you're gonna flip it back over onto the parchment so the seam is down. So I'm gonna just remove the cloth. You have this big, beautiful loaf of bread. And I'm gonna take a knife and score it. I'll show you two ways. The first I like is kind of a triangle, so I'm just gonna slice it a little bit here, and I'm just gonna make a triangle shape with my cut. This makes a really pretty top as it bakes. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one, I'm gonna flip this over. See, I just use like a bowl like this to put it into. So whatever you have, that's the cool thing about this is even if you don't have a lot of cool kitchen gadgets, you can still make awesome bread. So I'm gonna now do cuts that are in a square. So 2 lines parallel. You're not cutting very far in, just, I don't know, about 1/4 inch, 1/8 to 1/4 inch. Okay, and I'm just gonna square this up. Tip of my knife isn't very sharp. So you can play with designs you want in the top of your bread. It just makes it look like you bought it. Okay, so now I'm gonna open my oven. Just gonna leave my pans in there. And plop the bread in. Again, this is on 460, the temperature. I've got one pot that's a little smaller than the other. So the bigger pot, the bread just spreads out and looks bigger. The other one, it kind of rises higher in the oven. And I'm just gonna plop it in like so. And then the other one. And I'm gonna put a lid on each one of these. My big heavy lid. It doesn't really matter if the paper sticks out. Okay, and you're gonna just slide that back in, and you're gonna set your timer for 20 minutes with the lid on. All right? Now, what's gonna happen is after that 20 minutes, and some people will say 15 and 15. I've heard to bake it 30 minutes. I've heard to bake it 40 minutes. So you're just gonna have to play around with how your oven works. I baked them in other ovens that for some reason the bottom just burned no matter what I did. So play around with the pots that you're using and the oven. I've never had it turn out bad. Even when the bottoms burn, it's delicious. So you can just cut off the burnt part. But in this oven, that doesn't happen. So I usually bake it 20 minutes at 460 with the lid on. And then we're gonna lower the temperature. I lower mine to 420. You can try just lowering it to 440. Again, it kind of depends on the oven, but once we lower that temperature, we take the lid off and let it finish cooking and brown up. So if yours, I've forgotten to turn down the temperature before, and the crust just gets really crusty faster. So if you realize, oh, I didn't turn the temperature down, just look at it and see if it needs to come out. So I have played around with baking times on this, and I don't feel like, I think if you bake it at least 30 to 35 minutes, it's baked. Now if you want it more baked, if you want a crispier crust, then bake it longer, or maybe bake it at a higher temperature. But like I said, after 20 minutes, I turn my oven down to 420, take the lid off, and I bake it another 10 to 15 minutes, just as it browns up. And I do that because I want to be able, a lot of times I make these and I put them in the freezer, they freeze great, but then I want to pull them out and I want to be able to put them back in the oven to crisp them up and have them be like they're just oven fresh. And if I haven't baked it too long, then I feel like it turns out better, right? I don't already have this really hard crust that then I'm putting in the oven again, crusting it up more. So again, it depends. I've given this bread to people who really like a thick, crusty crust, and they like it baked longer or baked at a higher temperature. So play around with those times, and I'll show you once we pull it out of the oven what it looks like. Okay, we're finally to the most exciting part of this whole process, and that is getting to see our bread done. No, tasting it is actually even better. But look how beautiful this turned out. Actually, I'm gonna pull it out of the pan so you can see it. Woo! I am amazed every time I do this. I just can't believe that I can make something like this and never mess it up. This I baked a little bit longer. I wanted a crustier crust because I'm using it today. But every time it has worked for me, which is unbelievable because I'm not a very good baker and I usually ruin most things. So this I would let cool for a little bit before you slice it. Inside, the texture is just so soft and wonderful, and outside you've got this nice crispy crust. And we love it with butter, obviously, but one of our favorite dipping sauces is equal amounts of olive oil and balsamic vinegar with a big helping of shredded Parmesan in it mixed together, so everything will kind of mix together. So I like to go more on the cheese rather than less. Anyway, and then just dip your bread in that. It's so delicious. I also made some homemade pesto the other day with some basil I had in the garden. That was super easy and super delicious on this bread. So I hope that you'll try it. It is so much easier than sourdough. I spent years trying to do sourdough and wasting so much flour feeding that thing and trying to get it to be right. This fruit start is amazing. Like, it really blows my mind every time how well it works. And one thing I didn't mention in the previous videos is once your starter is done, you can put it in the fridge and save it and then pull it out and use it. I have never done that, but I know on recipes that I have, it does say that you can store it in the fridge. You know, obviously that slows it down, like sourdough, when you're wanting to put your sourdough on hold. But you can try that. I just time it so I'm always ready to use it when it's ready, and you get these delicious loaves of bread. I just have to show you how yummy this is. Can you hear that yummy crust? But look at the inside. Ooh, still really hot, but I couldn't wait to eat it.